The bridge of the UES Steadfast hummed with quiet tension. Captain Dae-jung stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the viewscreen display a sight that made his stomach turn. 200 alien warships hung in the darkness beyond the barrier, their hulls gleaming under distant starlight. "They've been sitting there for 6 hours now," Young-soo said from his station. The communications officer looked tired. Nobody had slept since the alien fleet arrived. Still no response to our hails. Dae-jung nodded slowly. He had expected this. The Galactic Assembly never responded to human communications anymore. Not since the disaster of first contact 30 years ago, when a simple misunderstanding had turned into a bloodbath. Since then, Earth and its colonies lived behind the barrier, a network of defense stations that surrounded human space like a steel fence. "Captain, I'm picking up new activity," Ji-won called out. The weapons officer's fingers flew across her console. "They're moving. Slow approach, maintaining formation." On the viewscreen, the alien fleet began to advance. Dae-jung felt his jaw tighten. This was it. The moment Earth had been preparing for since the isolation began. "Open a channel," he ordered. "All frequencies." Young-soo worked his controls. "Channel open, sir." "Attention Galactic Assembly Fleet," Dae-jung said clearly. "You are approaching the sovereign territory of humanity. State your intentions immediately." For a long moment, there was only silence. Then the viewscreen flickered and changed. An alien face appeared, its features strange and unsettling. Multiple eyes, skin like smooth stone, a mouth that moved in ways that seemed wrong. "I am Commander Subin of the Galactic Assembly Expeditionary Force," the alien said. Her voice came through translated, emotionless and flat. "We come with an ultimatum for your species." "We're listening," Dae-jung replied. "Humanity will surrender all military capabilities immediately," Subin stated. "Your weapons, your ships, your defense stations, all of it will be dismantled under our supervision. You will accept protective custody for the safety of the galaxy." Ji-won let out a sharp breath. Young-soo turned to look at Dae-jung with wide eyes. The captain kept his expression neutral. "And if we refuse?" he asked. "Then we will pacify your species by force," Subin said simply. "This is not negotiable. You have 12 hours to respond." The transmission cut off. The bridge fell silent. "Contact Earth Command," Dae-jung ordered quietly. "Priority 1. Tell them the Assembly has issued their ultimatum." On Earth, in the deep bunkers beneath the Pacific Ocean, President Taemin received the news with grim acceptance. He had known this day would come. The question was never if, but when. "What are our options?" he asked the assembled council. General Woo Jin stepped forward. The old soldier had fought in the border skirmishes that followed first contact. He bore scars from those battles, both visible and hidden. "We can surrender," Woo Jin said bluntly, "strip ourselves of all defenses and hope the Assembly treats us fairly. Given their history with other species, we'd likely be confined to Earth, forbidden from space travel, monitored constantly. We'd survive, but we'd never be free again." "Or," Taemin prompted. "Or we fight," Woo Jin continued. "But not just defensively. If they cross the barrier, we activate the Genesis Protocol." Around the table, several council members shifted uncomfortably. The Genesis Protocol was Earth's darkest secret, known only to a handful of people. Ambassador Hana leaned forward, her weathered face hard. "Let me make sure I understand," she said coldly. "You're suggesting that if they attack us, we destroy them completely. Not just their fleet, everything." "That's exactly what I'm suggesting," Woo Jin replied. "We spent 30 years preparing for this. Our sleeper ships are positioned throughout assembly space. They think we've been hiding behind the barrier in fear. They have no idea we've been planting weapons on their doorstep the entire time." Taemin stood and walked to the window. Outside, through meters of reinforced glass, he could see the ocean floor. Strange fish swam past, unaware of the decisions being made that would determine the fate of billions. "How many?" he asked quietly. "How many what, sir?" "How many alien civilians would die if we activated the protocol?" Woo Jin hesitated. Best estimates put it at 40 billion across all assembly homeworlds. The number hung in the air like poison. 40 billion lives. Men, women, children. Innocent beings who had nothing to do with their government's decision to attack Earth. "And how many humans live in our territory?" Taemin asked. 18 billion, sir. Taemin turned back to face the council. "So to save 18 billion of our own people, you're asking me to threaten 40 billion of theirs." "I'm asking you to ensure our survival," Woo Jin said. "The Assembly won't stop with this fleet. If we surrender, they'll dismantle us piece by piece. If we destroy this fleet but leave their homeworlds intact, they'll send more ships, and more after that. The only way to guarantee Earth's safety is to make the cost of attacking us absolutely unacceptable. Ambassador Hanna spoke up. He's right, Mr. President. I've dealt with the Assembly for years. They don't respect weakness. They don't negotiate with species they consider inferior. The only language they understand is power. Then let's speak clearly, Taman decided. Send them a message. Simple and direct. 2 hours later, every ship in the Assembly fleet received the same transmission. Ambassador Hanna's face appeared on their screens, her expression carved from stone. Final notice from Earth, she said. Push further and civilization ends here. This is your only warning. Aboard the Assembly flagship, Commander Subin watched the message with confusion. She turned to her tactical officer. Analysis? It appears to be a threat, Commander, the officer replied. Though the specifics are vague. They have 40 ships to our 200, Subin said dismissively. What could they possibly threaten us with? Unknown, Commander. Subin made a decision. Continue the advance. These primitives are bluffing. They don't have the capability to threaten the Assembly. On the Steadfast, Captain Daejung watched the alien fleet resume its approach. Young-Soo turned to him with fear in his eyes. Captain, they're not stopping. I can see that, Daejung replied calmly. He opened a shipwide channel. All hands, this is the captain. Battle stations. This is not a drill. Throughout the ship, klaxons began to wail. Ji-Won armed every weapon system. Her hands steady despite the trembling in her chest. Young-Soo sent confirmation signals to the barrier stations, bringing their automated defenses online. Daejung thought about his daughter back on Earth. She was only 7 years old. He wondered if he would ever see her again. He wondered if any of them would survive what was coming. The alien fleet crossed into weapons range. The barrier sensors locked onto their targets. In the deep bunkers of Earth, President Tae-min placed his hand on a biometric scanner. May God forgive us, he whispered. The war for humanity's survival had begun. Deep beneath the surface of Antarctica, in a facility that officially didn't exist, Dr. Kyung-mi watched her screens with absolute focus. Around her, dozens of technicians worked at their stations monitoring systems that stretched across the galaxy. Status report, she called out. Genesis protocol standing by, her assistant replied. All sleeper units responding. We have positive locks on targets throughout assembly space. Kyung-mi allowed herself a small, grim smile. 30 years of work. 30 years of secret missions, disguised ships, and weapons hidden in plain sight. The Assembly thought humanity had spent those decades cowering behind the barrier. They had no idea what humans had really been doing. Keep monitoring, she ordered. If Earth Command sends the activation code, we need to be ready. On Mars, in the administrative center of humanity's largest colony, Hae-jin rushed through the corridors. She burst into the emergency command center where her staff waited with worried faces. Start the evacuation, she ordered. All civilians into the deep shelters. We have maybe 6 hours before this becomes a war zone. Ma'am, the people are asking questions, one of her assistants said. They want to know what's happening. Tell them the truth, Hae-jin replied. The Assembly has come to force us into submission. Earth is preparing to fight back. And when they do, nowhere in the solar system will be completely safe. She pulled up the colony's defense grid on her display. Mars had its own weapons, its own shields. But against 200 alien warships, those defenses would last maybe an hour. The real question was whether Earth's plan would work before the Assembly fleet could reach the colonies. Back on Earth, in a small office filled with screens and data terminals, a young analyst named Min-ho made a discovery that changed everything. He stared at his findings for a long moment, then grabbed his tablet and ran. He burst into General Wu Jin's office without knocking. The general looked up with annoyance that quickly changed to concern when he saw Min-ho's face. Sir, I've been analyzing the Assembly's communications, Min-ho said breathlessly. The encrypted channels we've been monitoring. I broke their latest codes. And? Wu Jin prompted. They're not afraid of us because we're aggressive, Min-ho explained. They're afraid because we're innovative. Sir, I found internal memos discussing human technological development. What took other species 10,000 years, we achieved in 500. What took them 1,000 years, we did in 50. Wu Jin leaned back in his chair. They're afraid we'll surpass them. Not just surpass them, sir. According to their projections, if left unchecked, humanity will develop technology 1,000 years beyond the Assembly within the next 2 centuries. They're not trying to protect the galaxy from us. They're trying to protect themselves. Wu Jin stood abruptly. Come with me. The president needs to hear this. 30 minutes later, Minho presented his findings to the Security Council. President Taemin listened in silence, his expression growing darker with each revelation. So this entire war, he said slowly, is based on their fear that we'll become more advanced than them. Yes, sir, Minho confirmed. In their own words, humanity represents an existential threat to assembly dominance. Not because we're violent, but because we learn too quickly. Ambassador Hana laughed bitterly.
Of course.
They dress it up as concern for galactic peace, but it's really about maintaining their power structure. They can't allow a species to rise that might challenge their authority. Which means surrender was never really an option, Taemin realized. Even if we gave up all our weapons today, they'd still see us as a threat. They'd find some excuse to eliminate us eventually. Exactly, Wu Jin agreed. This fight was inevitable from the moment we made first contact, and they realized how quickly we advance. The president looked at Dr. Kyung-mi's image on the video screen. She had joined the meeting from her facility in Antarctica. Doctor, explain the Genesis protocol to everyone here, he ordered. Leave nothing out, Kyung-mi nodded. 30 years ago, immediately after the first contact disaster, we realized the assembly would never leave us in peace. So we began a secret program. We built ships designed to look like nothing important. Old cargo haulers, mining vessels, even disguised asteroids. We sent them out on long, slow journeys throughout assembly space. She pulled up a star map. Red dots appeared across it, scattered throughout alien territory. Each of those dots represents a sleeper weapon, she continued. They've been drifting silently for decades, waiting. Some are positioned in orbit around assembly homeworlds. Others hide in asteroid belts near their industrial centers. A few are buried on moons and small planets throughout their territory. What kind of weapons? One council member asked. Planet killers, Kyung-mi replied simply. Each unit carries enough destructive power to sterilize a world. Atmosphere burners, tectonic destabilizers, biological agents that can wipe out all life. If we activate the protocol, we don't just defeat their military. We destroy their entire civilization. The room fell silent. The enormity of what they had created hung over them like a thundercloud. How many worlds would we hit? Taemin asked. 47 primary targets, Kyung-mi answered. Every assembly homeworld, every major colony, every military stronghold. If we activate everything simultaneously. They'd have no time to evacuate, no time to respond. By the time they realized what was happening, it would already be over. And our own people. Hyejin's voice came through the link from Mars. What happens to the colonies when the assembly fleet retaliates? That's why we have the barrier, Wu Jin said. It's designed to hold long enough for the Genesis protocol to force an assembly surrender. They can't maintain a war if their homeworlds are burning. You're gambling billions of human lives on that assumption, Hyejin accused. I'm gambling billions of human lives on the certainty that the assembly will never stop coming for us otherwise, Wu Jin shot back. This isn't about winning a battle. This is about ensuring they never dare to attack us again. Captain Dae-jung's face appeared on another screen. He was still on the bridge of the Steadfast, still watching the approaching alien fleet. Mr. President, he said formally, the assembly fleet will reach engagement range in 40 minutes. I need authorization to activate defense protocols. Taemin took a deep breath. He thought about his children, safe in a bunker somewhere beneath the Pacific. He thought about all the children across human space, unaware that their future hung in the balance. He thought about the alien children on assembly worlds, equally innocent, equally undeserving of what might come. But mostly, he thought about freedom, about humanity's right to exist without chains, without limits imposed by those who feared human potential. Captain Dae-jung, you are authorized to engage, he said clearly. All barrier stations are weapons-free. If they cross the line, hit them with everything we have. Understood, sir, Dae-jung replied. Dr. Kyung-mi, Taemin continued. Bring the Genesis protocol to active standby. If the barrier falls, if they break through to the colonies, you will activate on my command. Yes, Mr. President, Kyung-mi said quietly. Taemin looked around the room at the faces of his advisors. We tried peace. We tried isolation. They wouldn't allow it. Now we show them what happens when you corner humanity. We show them that we're not prey to be hunted or children to be controlled. We're humans and we bow to no one. In space, the assembly fleet continued its advance. Commander Subin stood on her bridge, confident in her superiority. 200 ships against 40. Advanced technology against primitive defenses. This would be over quickly. Commander, we're detecting unusual energy signatures from the defense stations, her sensor officer reported. Weapons charging? Subin asked. Unknown, Commander. The readings don't match anything in our database. Subin frowned. That was odd, but not concerning. Whatever weapons these primitives had developed, they couldn't possibly threaten an assembly fleet. Continue advance, she ordered. All ships prepare to engage. The assembly fleet crossed the barrier's perimeter. On the Steadfast, Jiwan's fingers hovered over her weapons controls. Targets locked, she reported. Firing solutions ready. Fire, Captain Daejung ordered. The barrier came alive. The barrier stations opened fire simultaneously. Beams of concentrated energy lanced through space, striking the lead assembly ships with devastating accuracy. Explosions bloomed across the alien fleet as shields collapsed and hulls shattered. Direct hits on 23 targets, Jiwan reported, her voice tight with controlled excitement. 14 confirmed destroyed, 9 heavily damaged. Captain Daejung watched the tactical display with grim satisfaction. The assembly had expected resistance, but not this. 30 years of focused research had given humanity weapons that punched far above their weight class. They're breaking formation, Young-Soo called out, attempting to scatter and return fire. Keep firing, Daejung ordered. Don't give them time to organize. The barrier stations continued their relentless assault. Each station operated on automated targeting systems enhanced by advanced AI. They calculated firing solutions faster than any organic mind could process, adjusted for evasive maneuvers before they happened, and exploited weaknesses in assembly shields that the aliens didn't even know existed. On the assembly flagship, Commander Subin stared at her displays in disbelief. 23 ships destroyed in the first minute of combat. That shouldn't be possible. How are they penetrating our shields? She demanded. Unknown, Commander, her tactical officer replied. Their weapons are operating on frequencies we've never encountered. Our shield harmonics can't adapt fast enough. All ships full offensive spread, Subin ordered. Overwhelm their defenses with numbers. The assembly fleet surged forward, firing everything they had. Energy weapons, missiles, kinetic projectiles all screamed toward the barrier stations. But the station's shields held, absorbing and deflecting the incoming fire with surprising efficiency. Return fire ineffective, the tactical officer reported. Commander, our weapons aren't doing significant damage. Subin felt the first touch of real fear. How is that possible? We have superior technology. We have more ships. We should be crushing them. What Subin didn't know was that humanity had spent 3 decades studying every piece of assembly technology they could acquire, captured debris from the first contact battles, scans of assembly ships during long-range observations, even stolen data from assembly networks. Human engineers had analyzed every weakness, every flaw, every gap in their defenses. The barrier wasn't just built to fight the assembly. It was built specifically to counter their exact capabilities. Inside his fighter, Jae-hyun felt the neural interface connect with his mind. The small craft became an extension of his body, responding to his thoughts as quickly as he could form them. Around him, his squadron mates did the same. All fighters, this is Flight Leader, he transmitted. Execute attack pattern Delta. Show them what human pilots can do. His fighter screamed away from the carrier, accelerating at speeds that would kill an unprotected human. But Jae-hyun wasn't unprotected. His flight suit contained inertial dampeners that let him survive maneuvers no alien pilot could match. His neural interface let him process information and react faster than any conventional control system. The fighter squadron hit the assembly formation like sharks attacking a school of fish. They darted between the larger ships too fast for the alien weapons to track. Their smaller guns targeted vulnerable points, engines, sensor arrays, weapons ports. Each pass left another assembly ship crippled or destroyed. This is insane, one of Jae-hyun's wingmen transmitted. They can't even hit us. Stay focused, Jae-hyun ordered. Don't get overconfident. But his wingman was right. The assembly ships were designed to fight other assembly ships in traditional naval-style engagements. They had no defense against small, hyper-agile fighters piloted by humans who could pull maneuvers that should tear their ships apart. On Mars, Hye-jin watched the battle feed with growing hope. The evacuation was complete. All civilians were in the deep shelters. Now she could only watch and wait. Our forces are winning, her assistant said with barely contained excitement. For now, Hyojin replied cautiously, but the assembly still has over 150 ships left. This isn't over. She was right to be cautious. Commander Subin was regrouping her forces, pulling them back beyond the effective range of the barrier's weapons. Analysis, Subin demanded. They've been preparing specifically for this fight, her science officer reported. Every weapon they have is designed to counter our defenses. Every defensive system they have is optimized against our weapons. This wasn't a bluff. They were ready for us. Then we need to change tactics, Subin decided. Send a fast strike force to bypass the barrier. Head directly for Earth. If we threaten their homeworld, they'll have to pull back their defenses. But humanity had prepared for that too. As 30 assembly ships broke from the main fleet and accelerated toward Earth, they found their path blocked by mines. Thousands of them hidden in the darkness of space, invisible until it was too late. The mines weren't simple explosives. They were smart weapons that tracked targets and adjusted their detonation patterns for maximum damage. The strike force ran into the minefield at full speed. The resulting explosions lit up space like a new sun. When the light faded, only 12 ships remained, all of them damaged and retreating back toward the main fleet. In the Antarctic facility, Dr. Kyung-mi monitored the battle while keeping one eye on her other displays. The Genesis protocol remained on standby, ready to activate at a moment's notice. Doctor, we're receiving signals from our sleeper units. A technician reported. They've detected the battle. They're requesting confirmation of status. Tell them to maintain position, Kyung-mi ordered. No activation unless we receive the President's direct command. She hoped that command would never come. The Genesis protocol was a weapon of last resort, a doomsday device meant to ensure that if humanity died, the assembly died with them. Using it would mean crossing a moral line that could never be uncrossed, but she also knew that sometimes survival required doing the unthinkable. Back at the barrier, the battle entered its second hour. The assembly had lost over 80 ships now. Human forces had lost 2 barrier stations and 5 fighters. The exchange ratio was devastatingly in humanity's favor, but numbers still mattered. The assembly still had over 100 ships remaining. If they coordinated properly, if they found a weakness to exploit, they could still break through. Captain Dae-jung knew this. He opened a channel to all human forces. All ships, this is Dae-jung. I know you're tired. I know this seems impossible, but we're holding. We're winning. Every ship they lose makes them weaker. Every minute they stay here costs them more than they can afford. Hold the line. Make them pay for every meter they take. Show them that humanity doesn't break. On the steadfast, Ji-won fired another salvo, destroying an assembly cruiser. Young-soo coordinated with the barrier's automated systems, optimizing their firing patterns. Every crew member worked with desperate efficiency, knowing that any mistake could cost them everything. And then, something changed. On the assembly flagship, Commander Subin received a message from her homeworld. She read it twice, unable to believe what she was seeing. Commander, what are your orders? Her tactical officer asked. Subin looked at the message again. It was short and terrifying. We've detected weapons in orbit around our homeworld. Unknown origin. They're broadcasting a message. You were warned. Commander, what does this mean? Subin suddenly understood. The human warning hadn't been a bluff about defending their territory. It had been a statement of fact. They had weapons positioned throughout assembly space. Weapons that could destroy everything the assembly held dear. All ships cease fire, Subin ordered, her voice hollow. Fall back to defensive positions. Do not advance. On Earth, President Taiman received the same information. The Genesis Protocol sleeper units had revealed themselves, broadcasting their existence to every assembly world simultaneously. They hadn't fired. They hadn't needed to. Their mere presence was enough. Mr. President, the assembly fleet is withdrawing, General Wu Jin reported. Taemin nodded slowly. Dr. Kyung-mi, have the sleeper units stand down but maintain their positions. Let the assembly know that we can activate them at any time. Yes, sir, Kyung-mi replied. The battle was over. Humanity had won. But as Taemin looked at the casualty reports, at the list of destroyed ships and dead crew members, he felt no victory. Only the heavy weight of what they had been forced to do. Open a channel to the assembly flagship, he ordered. It's time to talk. Commander Subin stood in the detention cell aboard the Steadfast, her hands bound behind her back. Her flagship had been crippled during the retreat, and Captain Dae-jung's crew had pulled her from the wreckage before her ship exploded. Now, she was a prisoner, the first assembly officer ever captured by human forces. Captain Dae-jung entered the cell and stood across from her. For a long moment neither spoke. They simply studied each other, two warriors from different worlds, each trying to understand the other. "Why?" Subin finally asked. "Why did you plant weapons on our worlds? We came here to pacify you, to prevent you from becoming a threat, and we find you've already positioned weapons to destroy us all. You proved we were right to fear you." Dae-jung pulled up a chair and sat down. "You have it backwards," he said quietly. "We didn't plant those weapons because we wanted to threaten you. We planted them because you wouldn't leave us alone. After first contact went wrong, we tried to negotiate. We offered trade, cultural exchange, peaceful coexistence. You rejected everything. You declared us dangerous and cut off all contact. What were we supposed to do?" "Accept your place," Subin replied. "The galaxy has an order. The Assembly maintains peace by ensuring no species becomes powerful enough to threaten others. Your kind advances too quickly. You're unpredictable. You needed to be contained." "Contained?" Dae-jung repeated. "You mean controlled. You saw that we might eventually match your technology, maybe even surpass it, and that terrified you. So you decided to cripple us before we could become equals." Subin looked away. "You don't understand. We've seen this before. Aggressive species that expand too quickly, consume too much, destroy everything in their path. The Assembly has had to eliminate 7 such species in our history. We thought you would be the 8th. But we're not them," Dae-jung said firmly. "We never attacked you. We never invaded your space. We just wanted to be left alone to develop at our own pace. But you couldn't allow that, could you? Because peaceful coexistence means accepting that someday we might be your equals. And your entire civilization is built on the idea that you're superior to everyone else." The words hung in the air between them. Subin had no response because she knew he was right. On Assembly Prime, the homeworld of the Assembly's founding, Species Elder Bora convened an emergency council session. The ancient leader had guided the Assembly for over a century. She had seen countless crises, but never anything like this. "The humans have weapons positioned throughout our territory," she announced to the assembled representatives. "Weapons capable of destroying our worlds. They could activate them at any moment." Panic rippled through the council chamber. Representatives shouted over each other, demanding action, calling for immediate retaliation. "Silence," Bora commanded. The chamber fell quiet. Retaliation is exactly what the humans expect. It's why they built this doomsday system. Any attack on their worlds triggers automatic activation of their weapons. We would destroy them, and they would destroy us. Both civilizations would end. "Then what do you suggest?" asked a representative from one of the warrior species. "We accept their terms? Allow them to hold us hostage?" "I suggest we consider how we arrived at this point," Bora said. "We sent a fleet to conquer them without provocation. We threatened their extinction. They responded by ensuring that if they die, we die with them. Can we truly blame them?" "Yes," the warrior representative shouted. "They're primitives, upstarts. They have no right to threaten us." "They have every right to defend themselves," Bora countered, "just as we would if our positions were reversed. We made a grave error in judgment. We let our arrogance blind us to the possibility that these humans might be more capable than we assumed." Near one of the Assembly's industrial worlds, Captain Sangwoo sat in his sleeper ship and stared at the planet below. His vessel had been hidden in an asteroid belt for 27 years. During that time, he had watched the alien civilization below grow and change. He had observed their cities, their ships, their daily lives. They weren't monsters. They were people. Different from humans, yes, but still people. They had families. They built things. They laughed and mourned and hoped for the future, and he had a weapon capable of killing them all. Sangwoo opened a secure channel to Earth Command. "This is Genesis Unit 17. I need to speak with President Taemin. Urgent." It took several minutes to establish the connection. When Taemin's face appeared on the screen, He looked exhausted. "Captain Sangwoo," the president said, "is there a problem with your unit?" "No, sir," Sangwoo replied. "The weapon is functioning perfectly. That's the problem. Sir, I've been here for almost 3 decades. I've watched the people on this world. They're not our enemies. They're just following their government's orders, same as we are. If I activate this weapon, I'll kill billions of innocent beings." Taemin was quiet for a moment. "I know," he finally said. "Do you think I haven't thought about that? Every sleeper captain has the same moral burden. But the weapon itself doesn't need to fire to be effective. Its existence is what protects us. But what if someone makes a mistake?" Sangwoo pressed. "What if there's a communication failure and I receive a false activation order? What if I have a mental breakdown after spending 30 years alone and I activate anyway? Sir, we've created something that could end civilizations, and we're trusting it to remain unused forever. That's not a plan. That's a disaster waiting to happen." "You're right," Taemin admitted. "Which is why we need to find a better solution. But right now, that weapon is the only thing preventing the assembly from sending another fleet. I need you to hold your position a little longer. Can you do that?" Sangwoo looked at the planet below again. Billions of lives hanging by a thread. "Yes, sir. I can do that. But, sir, we need to find another way. This can't be our permanent solution." "Agreed," Taemin said. "I promise you, we're working on it." Back on Earth, Ambassador Hana prepared for the most important negotiation of her career. The Assembly had agreed to talks, but only on neutral ground. They chose a location in deep space, halfway between Assembly and human territory. She arrived, with a small diplomatic team, aboard an unarmed shuttle. The Assembly sent a similar delegation, led by Elder Bora herself. They met in a conference room on a neutral station that had been hastily constructed for this purpose. Hana sat across from Bora, 2 old women who had seen too much war and death. "Your people killed thousands of our soldiers," Bora said without preamble. "Your people tried to conquer us," Hana replied flatly. "What did you expect? That we'd surrender without a fight? We expected you to understand your place in the Galactic Order." "Our place?" Hana's voice hardened. "You mean beneath you. That's what this is really about. You can't handle the idea of a species that doesn't bow to the Assembly. You saw that humanity might eventually be your equal, and that terrified you. So much that you decided to eliminate us before we could get there." Bora's expression showed surprise. "You understand?" "Of course I understand," Hana said. "I've been studying the Assembly for 30 years. I've read your history. I know about the 7 species you destroyed. The official records call them aggressors and threats to galactic peace. No, but I've also read the classified files we managed to steal from your networks. Want to know what I found?" Bora remained silent. "All 7 of those species had one thing in common," Hana continued. "They were all developing faster than you expected. They were all showing signs that they might eventually challenge Assembly dominance. So you provoked wars with them, labeled them as dangerous, and wiped them out. Then you rewrote history to make yourselves look like heroes." "That's not how it happened," Bora protested weakly. "Isn't it?" Hana challenged. "Tell me honestly, if we had accepted your ultimatum and surrendered all our weapons, would you have left us alone? Or would you have found some other excuse to eliminate us eventually?" Bora looked away. "I don't know," she admitted. "Perhaps you're right. Perhaps we have become what we once fought against. Perhaps the Assembly's need to maintain control has twisted our original purpose." "Then it's time to change," Hana said. "Here are humanity's terms. We will maintain our, defensive positions, including the Genesis Protocol weapons. We will not disarm. We will not submit to Assembly control, and we will not stop our technological development." "Those are not terms," Bora said. "That's a demand for unconditional surrender on our part." "No," Hana corrected. "That's a demand for mutual respect. In exchange, we offer you something valuable. Peace. We won't expand into Assembly space. We won't interfere in your affairs. We'll even share some of our technology with you. But we do it as equals. not as subjects. The assembly will never accept this. Then the assembly will live with weapons pointed at their heads forever, Hana said coldly. Your choice. Adapt or remain hostage to your own fear. 3 months after the battle at the barrier, an uneasy peace had settled over both human and assembly space. The negotiations continued, slow and painful, but they continued. That alone was progress. Captain Dae-jung, now promoted to admiral, stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed diplomatic station. From here he could see both human and assembly ships docked peacefully. It seemed impossible after everything that had happened, but here it was. Proof that enemies could become something other than enemies, if both sides were willing to try. Admiral, Commander Subin said as she approached. She had been released from detention as part of the peace negotiations. Now she served as the Assembly's military liaison, working directly with Dae-jung to prevent future misunderstandings. Commander, Dae-jung replied, I still can't get used to working with you instead of fighting you. The feeling is mutual, Subin admitted. But I'm beginning to understand your perspective. We were wrong about your species. Not about your capabilities, we were right about those. But about your intentions. We never wanted war, Dae-jung said. We just wanted the freedom to exist on our own terms. I know that now, Subin said. I've been studying human history. Your species has a saying, isn't it? Don't tread on me. It seems to be a recurring theme in your culture. You'll accept almost any hardship, endure almost any difficulty, but you will not accept being controlled by others. That's accurate, Dae-jung agreed. We're stubborn that way. On Assembly Prime, Elder Bora addressed the full council for what she knew would be the last time. She was old, even by her species' long-lived standards. Soon she would retire and let younger leaders guide the Assembly into this new era. The Sol Accords are ready for ratification, she announced. By signing them, we formally recognize human sovereignty over their territory. We establish a demilitarized zone around human space. We agree to share technology and maintain open diplomatic channels. And in exchange, the humans agree to certain restrictions on their expansion and military development. They keep their doomsday weapons. The warrior representative protested. How is that acceptable? Because removing them would require another war, Bora replied patiently. And we would lose that war. Perhaps not in space, but certainly on the ground. The humans have made it clear that they will activate the Genesis Protocol if we attempt to forcibly disarm them. We must accept this reality. So they hold us hostage forever? No, Bora corrected. They hold us accountable. There is a difference. The weapons remain as insurance against our own aggression. If we leave them alone, the weapons remain dormant. If we attack them, we all die. It's actually a very elegant solution to the problem of mutual distrust. The council voted. The accords passed, though not unanimously. Change never came easily, especially when it required admitting past mistakes. On Earth, in a school classroom in Seoul, young students learned about the war that had nearly destroyed them. Their teacher, a veteran who had served on the barrier, taught them the hard lessons humanity had learned. We built weapons capable of ending civilizations, he told the children. We did it because we had to, because we had no other way to ensure our survival. But those weapons come with a terrible responsibility. We must never use them in anger. We must never use them for conquest. They exist only to ensure that no one can force us to surrender our freedom. One student raised her hand. Teacher, are we the bad guys? We threatened to kill billions of aliens. The teacher considered the question carefully. That's a good question. Are we bad for building those weapons? Or were the assembly bad for forcing us to build them? There's no simple answer. All I can tell you is this. Sometimes there are no good choices, only necessary ones. Our leaders chose to ensure our survival. Whether that makes us good or bad, history will judge. In the Antarctic facility, Dr. Kyung-mi prepared to hand over control of the Genesis Protocol to a new oversight system. The weapons would no longer be under sole human control. Instead, they would be managed by a joint committee of humans and artificial intelligence with strict protocols for activation. Are you sure about this? Her assistant asked. Giving up control? We're not giving up control, Kyung-mi explained. We're sharing responsibility. The weapons will remain in place, but no one person, no one government will have the power to activate them alone. It requires unanimous agreement from the Oversight Committee, which includes representatives from all human factions and 3 independent AI systems. This way, the weapons can't be used impulsively or maliciously. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was better than what they had before. The weapons would remain as a deterrent, but with enough safeguards to prevent accidental or deliberate misuse. On Mars, Heejin watched as construction crews rebuilt the sections of the colony damaged during the evacuation. Life was returning to normal, as much as normal was possible after coming so close to annihilation. "Administrator, we're receiving a message from Earth," her assistant reported. "They're authorizing expansion of the colony. New habitation domes, increased industrial capacity. They say it's part of the peace dividend." Hyojin smiled. A peace dividend. The resources that had been devoted to preparing for war could now go toward building a better future. It was a strange feeling, hope after so much fear. In his small ship near the assembly industrial world, Captain Sang-woo finally received the orders he had been waiting for. "Genesis Unit 17, you are cleared to return to Earth. Your mission is complete." "Well done, Captain." Sang-woo felt relief wash over him. He powered up his engines and set course for home. Below him, the alien world continued its daily routine, unaware of how close it had come to destruction. He hoped those people would never know. He hoped his weapon would remain a secret forever, that the threat of its existence would be enough to maintain peace. As his ship accelerated away, he took one last look at the world he had watched for so long. "Stay safe," he whispered. "All of you." 6 months after the battle, President Taemin stood before the United Earth government and delivered his final address before stepping down from office. The war had aged him. He looked decades older than he had been when it started. "We survived," he told the assembled representatives. "We defended our freedom and secured our future. But we must never forget the cost. Thousands died in the battle. Billions lived under the threat of annihilation. We built weapons that could end worlds, and we came terrifyingly close to using them." He paused, letting his words sink in. "Going forward, we must be better." He continued. "The Genesis Protocol remains active, but it must be our last resort, not our first answer. We must prove that we can be strong without being cruel, that we can defend ourselves without becoming the monsters we feared. We must show the galaxy that humanity can be trusted with power." The representatives rose in applause. Taemin acknowledged them, then stepped away from the podium. His part in this story was done. Now it was up to the next generation to write the rest. In a training facility on the moon, Jae-hyun taught new pilots the skills they would need to defend humanity. He drilled them relentlessly, pushing them to their limits and beyond. "Why are we training so hard?" one young pilot asked. "We're at peace now. We train hard because peace is fragile," Jae-hyun replied. "We train hard because the moment we grow weak, someone will test us again. We train hard because the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. Your weapons are not for conquest. They're not for glory. They're for one purpose only, ensuring that humanity never has to bow to anyone." Young Soo, promoted to Communications Director for Earth's Defense Fleet, monitored all channels for signs of renewed assembly aggression. But instead of threats, he found something unexpected. A message from a species outside the assembly, far beyond known space. "Earth," the message read, "we have observed your conflict with the assembly. We have seen how you defended your independence. We wish to open diplomatic relations with your species. We believe you could be valuable allies." Young-soo forwarded the message to Ambassador Hana with a note. "It seems word of our stand has spread. We're getting attention from across the galaxy." Hana read the message and smiled grimly. Humanity had made its statement. The galaxy had received the message. Earth would not be conquered. Earth would not surrender, push too far, threaten human freedom and civilization ends. The final notice had been delivered. Now the entire galaxy knew. Humanity was not prey. Humanity was not weak. Humanity would defend itself with whatever weapons necessary. And if forced to choose between slavery and mutual destruction, humanity would burn the galaxy down rather than submit. But more importantly, the galaxy now knew that humanity preferred peace. They had held ultimate weapons and chosen not to use them. They had won their war and chosen not to pursue revenge. They had proven themselves strong enough to fight and wise enough to stop. Ambassador Hana drafted her response to the distant species. "We would be honored to establish diplomatic relations. But understand this, we seek friendship, not dominance. We offer cooperation, not control. If you can accept us as equals, then we can build something better together." She sent the message and leaned back in her chair. The future remained uncertain. There would be more challenges, more conflicts, more difficult decisions.